One of the starting points to me is the fact that you could look at DC's history as over time, especially in the modern era, it's defined by big events and by big crises, and you had a hand in some of those. And I would argue at this point in time that this is, in terms of what comes out of the event, the largest, the biggest scale event, most important event DC's ever done. And I think, as we'll discuss today, it might be the most important event in any comic history for where it's going. And one of the reasons I feel that way is that when you get to the end and you have the multiverse defined in the way that it is, and these worlds mapped out, I sort of got that feeling at the end, like at the end of 2001. There's the Star Child is watching the universes being born. The fact that from a distance you might look like the Star Child only, reinforces that. But that was definitely one of your, that wasn't necessarily your major intent, but there was a point at which you realized, my God, I'm going to have a chance to define where DC's entire universe can go going forward in the future.
Well, yeah. You're making it sound bigger than it felt when I was doing it. So, no, basically I wanted to make this map. That was the first thing, and Ryan Hughes did such an amazing job of it. We were looking at a bunch of different things that we liked, old psychedelic posters and stuff by Paul Lathaway, the architect. And we just wanted to do something that could somehow condense everything that I loved about DC into one image, and one quite simple image. And the way that Ryan worked that through, he was the one who decided where all the Earths actually went in the quadrants. And he did an amazing job of linking them all. Every single thing there has every connection means something. Every little circle or orbit actually has a meaning, and it connects all the worlds in 4 quadrants, as I say, which all kind of mean different things. So yeah, I came up with a little sketch, but Ryan had to sit down and actually apply his magnificent brain to this thing and make it work.
And the interesting thing is, it's a series that comes with its own guidebook at some point in the publication. And I know one of the things that I've heard a lot of people comment that I love was, people would say, why didn't you publish the guidebook first? It certainly would have made it easier. But in an interview I saw with you, you had an interesting answer to that, because you referenced how much you continually try to recreate that feeling they had the first time you read a comic, which I think was like Justice League 45, where you said you were dropped into a world with no expectation of having it explained to you, and then working your way through that immersion was really part of the process.
Well, yeah, because I was a kid, I like comics, but I really got into comics after the Batman TV show. So I picked up this Justice League comic, which had probably had Batman on the cover. Or in fact, I think it might have had Robin on the cover, the Earth 2 Robin, who looked a bit like Batman, but with a yellow cape. And suddenly there was all these amazing characters, Dr. Fate, there was Dr. Midnight, there was things I'd never heard of, Wildcat. And I didn't know who these guys were. I'd only got the second half of the story. I had no concept of where they'd come from or what they were. And I was just so excited by the idea that there was this epic universe out there that I could start to explore. I'd found this little fragment of it. And it wasn't until, I think, when Neil Adams did that cover, it was a 100-page super spectacular thing that Neil Adams drew pretty much every DC hero on. And there was a key at the back, and that was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. But the key came later, I didn't know anything until I got this Neil Adams book, and suddenly, Dr. Midnight, he comes from Earth 2, and he does this, his name's Charles McKnight, and I still remember the names of all these guys. Al-Ra, and all those people from all those other worlds, and I know all their secret identities, God help me. But yeah, so the key came from me after, and I think it's much better to be immersed and thrown into the chaos of comics. Honestly, I think it's part of the fun of them when you pick up your first book and realise there's an entire universe, indeed a multiverse, indeed several multiverses.
Next slide, please. So there's this great moment in the Pax Americana book where Captain Atom decides he wants to figure out what makes a dog tick, and so he dissects it.
And it looks really bad, it's big.
And if you go to the next slide, you'll see he's dissected it with that great line. I thought the pieces would explain the whole. And of course, once he's done dissecting the dog is dead. And so I love that moment, because that's kind of how I felt trying to get through all of this and figure out how to talk about it, in the sense that Multiversity is a work that almost demands to be dissected by you as a reader, and yet at the same time you're asking that, and you're pointing out the problematic nature of doing such a thing. Thank you for laying the challenge out so clearly.
But I think it's something we do naturally, I wasn't saying it's necessarily a bad thing, it's just unfortunately if you love something and you start getting into it, we all know this, there's a point where you're sitting with your friends and you're talking through your favourite movie and it's really exciting and you find stuff, and then it hits a wall where you're thinking, we've been talking about this movie way too much, and the movie starts seeming really dull and boring. And I kind of, in Multiversity, it was really about the way that the relationship between the creator and the audience has changed over the last 15 years, 20 years since the internet. And it was about the fact that we spend a lot of time talking about this between each other. You know, I read stuff on message boards whenever I've got an internet connection, which is only 4 months of the year in LA. And I like to see what everyone's thinking. And when we were doing the Batman books, people were speculating constantly who is the Black Glove, and I realised there was this amazing kind of critical force out there. Everyone was talking about this thing, they were exchanging ideas, they were coming up with their own ideas, and it seemed really dynamic and exciting. But this whole series was about that relationship and how it's changed and how the barriers between the creator and the audience have kind of dissolved. But at the same time, it's like you can talk these things to death, you know, and as much as we love it, we can talk them to death. So I was kind of wanting to at least get that down on paper and kind of give it the form of a mashed dog.
Well, since we're going to talk it to death, because that's why we're here for an hour, so if we're to begin our dissection process, to start with the basic
elements.
Start
with the eyeballs.
Next slide. Here is our major protagonist in the guise we see him, Nick Zuatan, pretty much almost exactly where you left him at the end of Final Crisis.
Yeah, just his little apartment, you know, it's a one-room apartment in probably in Brooklyn or somewhere, reading comic books, you know, and he kind of represented us. And it was weird for me because a lot of people that saw the evil characters, the gentry, and people were saying, well, this represents comics critics, and you know, this is really bad, he's put us as the villains of the piece. And I thought, no, guys, on the first page the hero appears and he's a comics critic. So the gentry didn't necessarily represent anyone who thought they were represented by the gentry. Nick Zuatan represents all of us, the readers and the critics.
And on the next slide, we'll see there he is in his more heroic stature as the last of the monitors. Again, and I think what's fascinating to me is you're about to plow your way through this immense series, but as I indicated, it's picking up right where you left with Final Crisis. There's a through line, and we'll pull up some of those other through lines as we go through this. So there's our hero in the most simple way. You go to the next slide, as you just referenced a second ago. There's your appearing to be the main villain, Gentry.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me is that the Gentry is created in a way that by simple look, you can tell this is a very good guy. But there's a sort of nondescript nature here. I mean, in superhero comics, we've sort of evolved to that place where the villains are as well-defined in terms of their traits and their looks as heroes, but that's not something you're necessarily going for here.
No, well, I mean, this was an easy one. In the old alchemical texts in the medieval times, they used to represent the spirit as an egg, a winged egg. So I thought an easy way to represent a bad spirit is to do a black, bat-winged evil egg. And it kind of, that's all it is, it's an evil spirit. But at the same time, all of the members of the gentry and this character, Intellectron, who kind of appears first because he analyses things to death. But they're all based on different villain archetypes. So this guy is the mastermind taken to the limit. You know, there's this monolithic eye, the mastermind who takes things apart, who breaks things down, analyses them to bits. He's the super smart guy taken to his demonic limit. And each one of them is a different archetype. You know, the Dame Merciless character was all the femme fatales in one kind of horrific female figure, with monstrous kind of wasted female figure. The Demogorgon character represented the horde, which is like the zombie horde, or the army that's attacking, and so on. Each one of them had a different, I can't remember the rest of them now because they weren't as scary, but they all represent a different villain archetype taken to the limit. You know, the weird house, Lord Broken, is kind of the Joker, the Arkham Asylum thing, the bad house, the haunted house. So each one of them was that, strained through to how far can we take it? It still echoes these concepts, and kind of puts them into a very simple hieroglyphic image.
But of course, the one thing that everybody plays off when they do this is the gentry, and you know, as you're doing your etymology and trying to figure out where this goes for, obviously everybody begins talking about gentrification, and that is an element that is very obvious in here from, and we'll come back to this again, but from the very first page of the series to the very last page of the series, this notion of occupying a space and having to make some sort of transaction in order to continue to occupy that space seems to be a baseline element here.
Yeah, and the whole book's about paying your rent, ultimately, that's what it's about. It's kind of, and it's the baseline of what we do, as much as what we do, we like to think of it as art, and we try our best to inhabit this space, and we're bringing this creativity out of our souls. Ultimately, in a capitalist world, we're doing this to pay the rent, and I also wanted to acknowledge that. So, the gentry represent, like you say, gentrification of people who come into an area and recreate it in their own image. But the gentry was also a name that was given to the fairy folk. They used to call them the good people and the tripping darlings. They had all these weird names to avoid actually saying who you were talking about. And the gentry are that as well. The gentry were fairy things, they come from the outside. So the name had like several meanings, and the gentry are also the upper class as well, they're behind most of the world's troubles. So it has a bunch of different meanings, and hopefully the whole comic's kind of like that. As you know, I'm piling this stuff on, so it's easy to take it apart in a lot of different ways.
Then in the spoiler category, if we go to the next slide, we find out, of course, the gentry are not the main villain of the piece. Yeah. We find out at the end, and I love including this image with the text on it, because when you say that there's sort of this capitalist nature to that transaction, what might be going on, there's something so wonderfully businessy and capitalistic about the way that the threat is phrased here. I have concluded my assessment of your strength. Yeah. I've heard that in a few meetings before. I have nothing to fear from you, again, heard that in a few meetings before too. And it's fascinating to me, and I hope to everybody, that you followed this along and you think you figured out where the villain is, and it happens, and that ultimate villain is so powerful, it's ultimately dismissive of everything that's happened at this point in the book.
And also, it was to also acknowledge the fact that in superhero universes and continuities, no story ever ends. And particularly now, when things go from event to event, we're always leading on to the next big villain. So I wanted to kind of make this villain that was so big that he sits on buildings, he makes his throne out of skyscrapers. And the bad guys that we thought were the worst things in the universe are just these little familiars flitting around and building things for him. And you'll never see the end of this story. I mean, maybe DC will tease out some strands in the future, but it's about the never-ending story. The continuity never dies. There's always a new generation to take things on. There's always going to be the next big villain, and they just get bigger and badder all the time.
Okay, so on the most basic level of cutting this apart, you've got protagonist, villain, and then there's the other levels as we start digging deeper that are so much fun to play with here. The first ones I wanted to talk about have more to do with numbers and designs. We go to the next slide. There's a fascinating thing at work here at minimum with not just the number 8, but the sign, the infinity sign that the 8 turns into on its side, the closed loop part of this. I love that image because by taking a question and filling it out, there's that interesting thing there. Probably my favorite example in the whole book is Dr. Savannah trying to create an 8th day of the week. And that's what makes me wonder, do you think, is that closed loop a bad thing? When you talk about superhero comics, for example, going forward, that's not necessarily a closed loop, it should be a progression or an evolution.
Well, I saw it as a Mobius strip as well, and if you take a Mobius strip up in higher dimensions, then you can keep circling, keep going round but adding new iterations. So it was the idea, but honestly, the simple thing with the 8 came from the notion that DC Universe is built on vibrations, and that wasn't my idea, that was like John Broome, Gardner Fox and Julie Schwartz in the 60s. So I was always fascinated by the fact that DC Universe is a musical engine, and it's made of vibrations, and all the worlds vibrate at different frequencies. Now imagine if you heard it from outside, it would make music, it would make a song in fact, and that was the song that Superman was whistling at the end of Final Crisis, he was singing the song in the multiverse. And we kind of went with this idea of octaves, and particularly in the Pax, which was really built around the octave. What became more exciting was that the ultimate image of the superhero, if you boil it down for me to one thing, you get that mask, the domino mask. And so the last image in Pax is the domino mask, which to me kind of summed up everything about superheroes, but it's got a bullet hole. So you're kind of bulleting the notion of the superhero, and it fits so perfectly. Ultimately, the series is about that mask. And the mask is an 8, and it's just, it's perfect. The thing wrote itself. Honestly, I didn't have to do anything.
But that also ties, because at the end of Pax, what you basically have there is that moment where you have, for the sake of argument in that world, the first superhero, the first true superhero killed, thus setting up that loop that seems to...
Yeah, and he's killed by his own son again, and that's what happens in comics. Each generation kills the one before, and each kills the father, figuratively or literally, depending on who you are. Richard Dad, the Victorian artist, this guy used to do all the fairy paintings, and he's kind of somewhere in the background of this. He went insane and killed his own father thinking he was Osiris, the Egyptian god, but you should check out his paintings. He did some of the most beautiful, insane fairy paintings ever known. But yeah, that's just complete out of the blue. Richard Dad, check him out. So yeah, it was about that. It was about, you know, killing your darlings, killing the past, moving forward, but ultimately you're still in the same loop because someone will come and kill you, which is what happens to the president.
And so I would say the same thing sort of about the number 9 if we go to the next slide, but that's not, it's great here because it's as much about the symbology. I mean, obviously, both here and in Final Crisis, the Rubik's Cube, the 9-sided, the 9-die figure there has its impact, but you also a lot, especially since you're doing packs, you're playing with a 9-panel grid. And what I love about the next couple of slides that we run here from issue 2 and the finale is you have that bottom corner right shot, and if you go to the next slide, you go to the next page, it's starting to blow up, and it's now taking over the grid of the book itself, to the point where if you go to the next slide, now you're in a land where the grid is totally off, almost the perception of what you're expecting.
And that was Ivan Rice's amazing idea. I mean, the poor Ivan, I was giving him so much on that last issue. I was expanding the page count, and he just kept doing it. I say, Ivan, you've got to draw another 3,000 superheroes on this page. And I wouldn't tell him. And the next page, well, there's 8,000 superheroes, and you have to draw all of them. And he did it. He just did it doggedly, finished that book. But yeah, the grids thing was, for this particular one, for the last one, again, the musical stuff that we played through the whole series, at the end I said to Ivan, what I want to do here is create a pure superhero comic, almost like the essence of superhero comics. And we were looking at, Phil Spector's Wall of Sound, and the Jesus and Mary Chain, the British band, their early singles were with super heavy feedback. And buried in the feedback there was a kind of super simple 60s melody generally, and things like Never Understand and those early singles that they did. So we took that as a model and we thought, okay, there's a really simple 60s story in here. There's a bunch of superheroes fighting a giant monster. And then we'll just keep layering on feedback after feedback after feedback and iterations and multiple versions of superheroes in multiple worlds. And we were trying to get the Wall of Sound as a comic and strip away all the boring bits from most stories and actually just leave this screaming feedback. And again, I even took that idea and even multiplied the panels. As you see, just kept the panels proliferate, they break down into multiples. There's some pages where it seems to be like 1,000 panels on them. And that was the idea, is to create this Wall of Sound version of superhero comics so that it kind of felt like every superhero comic you'd ever read all at once.
Well, and that's a great transition to the next thing about Multiversity I wanted to talk about, which is that, especially when you see script pages, this is so much you're the creator of this, is so much your vision, but comics are a visual medium. You see that in your head, it's very evident, but you're also at a stage where you're very fortunate enough to work with some of the best illustrators in the business. And one of the experiences I had reading Multiversity was some of the amazing images that were there. So I just took a few, like this one, obviously there'll be a couple of Pax ones here, but I just remember seeing that in black and white for the first time, even before it got colored, noticing the way that you're playing the closed loop on the right, but there's just something so beautifully formalistic about that image.
Well, just the idea, that's the point where, Captain Atom and the President are having a talk, and in this book, no one's a good guy. The President's not a good guy, he's a schemer, he's a man who killed his father, and he's been trying to atone for it. So he drags Captain Atom into his insane scheme, and as you see, we've got the bird that flies around and eats the dragonfly, and it makes an 8 again. And you don't know who's quite playing who here. Is it the President eating Captain Atom, or is ultimately Captain Atom eating the President? And it kind of, we wanted to sum that up in that image. I think it's one of the best drawings Quigley's ever done. It's really beautiful page.
If we go to the next image, again, this one didn't make even the most sense to me till I saw it fully colored. I don't know that it's really one of the most amazing spreads I've ever seen in a book. There's so much happening here, so much that's going through. I don't even know what else to say.
Well, you can see it also, the bottom 4 there, it's kind of like, the first one's springtime in the morning, the second one's summer at noon, the third one's the autumn in the afternoon, and the fourth one is winter at night. And the clock hands make up a peace symbol, and it's just so perfect, the whole thing really fit again. Like I say, you don't have to write this stuff, you just put it in. And it is, the whole series, you realise he's been sitting there for a year, he's been coming back every day and sitting in his father's grave, and these girls are even leaving him food to eat because he's sitting there non-stop. And it was Buddha under the oak tree, because Buddha achieved enlightenment when he's sitting under the tree. So we had this idea of enlightenment. But how to present enlightenment? Usually in comics, enlightenment is presented as just a white page, so it's beyond it's the ineffable, you can't describe it. But we felt that would be too easy an out. So we actually decided, let's show what it feels like to have this moment of clarity and enlightenment. So the panels are jumbled, and if you notice, down to the centre, they get more, there's more and more of them, but they're all images of anger and war and meaninglessness and pointlessness and noise. And then the whole thing comes back again, it hits this flat line, and everything comes back completely ordered. And you'll notice that it's all thumbprints and patterns and everything, you know, the bricks behind them, the bubbles in the water, everything's suddenly patterned, everything makes sense. And this is his moment of clarity. He realises how it all works. He understands the algorithm that powers the universe. And so do we all.
If you go to the next image, in a totally different way, one of the things I loved about this was you really got the sense here where all the trains are coming back at once, all the trains from the multiverse, of the immensity of the scope. So you can have that really, well, enlightenment, I'm not sure if I'd call that an intimate moment, but I guess it is as presented. But again, this takes you back to the immensity of what you're really doing.
And also, it was stealing back Roy Lichtenstein to comics since he stole so much from us. So we figured we'd take his stuff and steal it back. So it was this beautiful kind of pop art image that Cameron Stewart did. But yeah, I wanted to show him, I love that train in the first Captain Marvel story. It's the weird modernist train that CC Beck drew. And it's just such an amazing thing. It seems to come from outside the frame and from outside reality. It doesn't fit into any particular design, it's its own thing. It almost looks human. It's a little bit like a mechanical version of the cat bus from Totoro or something. And so you can see it's even got a grin, you know, and I love the idea that there's lots of these things. They've been sent out across the entire multiverse to create Captain Marvels that we haven't seen yet.
And it's, at this point, I'd say too, to contrast something from PAX and from Monster Society book, because there's also another level of duality that goes on here. And I saw somebody once refer to this world as sort of the anti-PAX world. And there's also that reference to the fact that worlds come out of the order of worlds into the multiverse two at a time. Do you see it that way? Do you really feel like they are symbiotic in that way, or those connections don't? I guess it's embedded in the map now that I think.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought this one and PAX are the two comics that are closest to each other because they're the most formal, you know, in different ways. It's a very tight, formal, controlled story, the Captain Marvel one, even though it was made to seem otherwise. And PAX is very obviously tight and formal, but the two of them are actually quite similar. I think they're the two most Alan Moore-ish books in the entire series.
So you have Cameron Stewart there. If we go to the next slide, another artist you got to work with was Jim Lee. Yeah. And I love this page because obviously the reference to Crisis at the top, and it just turns out to be a dream,
yeah.
Which I think takes you into another level of how dreams play into all of this.
You know, it's a dream, but it's also a reference to Final Crisis, where Overkill is killed in Final Crisis, and obviously he's been on a search to find her, and he has found her, ultimately dead. So yeah, I just tied it back to Final Crisis, and Jim was the first person to say I really wanted to draw one of these books, and I did that splash of Hitler on the toilet just for Jim. You're welcome.
Obviously it wasn't just for him, it was for everyone.
I've been watching the new Hitler on the toilet comics. 12 issues.
Speaking of...
He had problems.
Speaking of Final Crisis throwbacks, if we go to the next image, probably my favorite one from here, because the way it's done and the crime.
Oh, look at Aquaman,
comes back.
Aquaman's worse.
But one of my favorite parts, of how this all plays out is you have, especially when they appear here, the sort of, for lack of a better phrase, the cutesy little heroes who ultimately turn out to be horrifyingly evil at the end of this.
Yeah, it's not so much even that these characters are evil, it's what they are, is that they've been made so that our main bad guy can test simulations, and he basically plays with them like toys and runs them through a bunch of different things and brings them back to life. So they don't even know that they're being controlled, they're just kind of, which is like comic book characters, you know, he runs them through these scenarios and then he brings them back to life, you know, just as Martian Manhunter was killed in Final Crisis and then was immediately brought back to life after Final Crisis. And it kind of is the condition of superheroes, so we were showing it on this toy scale, this kind of little big head scale.
That's very disturbing. Let's get rid of that image. Next slide.
Let's move on, please.
Which sort of takes us to the crux of decoding what's going on here. Ultra Comics, and having worked in the business for a while to know how this works, it's hilarious to me that, you know, some level of moving these things out and getting cover designs done early was helpful because Ultra Comics and a couple other books are seeded throughout the series. But Ultra Comics is the harbinger of doom. It's the book as it screams that you do not read this, and the instances where you see it in the text of Multiversity where people read it, all sorts of things, bad things happen. But this is also the book that's from our world, if you want to say Earth 33 is our world.
Yeah, well, I positioned our world as Earth 33. It used to be called Earth Prime, but Prime's been so overused for other things that we decided just to give it its own number. And yeah, I mean, the idea also this was based on my favourite comic cover, which is the Flash from the 60s, which kind of pointing out you must buy this comic. So we just kind of turned that on its head, and you must not read this comic, knowing, of course, that everyone would read it. And obviously, we are a lot stronger in this world, so we were able to handle this. In the world of the just, they read Ultra Comics and threw themselves off buildings. But we can read that, and obviously we're all still here. And wait, everyone, oh, there was a guy there last year who obviously read it. He isn't there anymore. That empty seat with people in it last year. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of, and to deal with the mechanics of reading a comic, because I find the thing about comics is they're tactile, you touch them, you know, you have this erotic relationship with them, you know. It's, you don't do that with movies. Movies are on a screen far away, and theatre's the same, but comics we actually engage with them on a very personal and intimate level. So I wanted a comic that played on that. And this also had to be the comic that contained the horrifying idea, not only the idea of death, you know, we try to replicate how it might feel to die at the end when all the neurons start going dead, which is, it wasn't pleasant to write or think about, but I had to sort of study what happens to people as they're going through the death experience. So there's that terrifying idea in it that we all have to deal with this one day, but an even more terrifying idea almost is the notion that, yeah, we're all going to have to die and you just wasted 10 minutes reading this comic book. And you just wasted 2 hours watching that movie. And so it was kind of at the heart of our entertainment, the stuff that we love to do. There's this kind of horrible ticking clock. And I wanted this comic to contain that idea, because I think it's my most appalling idea about the work that I do, is that it's wasting everyone's time.
That might be the most appalling, but the other appalling thing about this to me as a reader is if you look at this in the largest sense, what happens to Ultra in this book, you read it, it's an eternal death sentence, because you pick it up and you put it down and your experience with it is done, but the next time somebody else comes along and reads it, Ultra will go through the same torturous existence all over.
But also every time someone reads it, it links us all, because that's what the comic's about. You know, I thought, how do you... The idea of Earth Prime was originally that it was the Earth where there were no superheroes. So I wanted to take that literally, even though in later DC continuity we've kind of thrown superheroes like Superboy Prime into that world. I thought, no, let's take it this serious. What would a superhero look like here and now, where we all live? And I thought, well, one idea of a superhero is to create a network of multiple minds, and then we're all part of something much bigger than us. And it's something that will last, you know, in a generation's time. Someone might read that who's not even in this audience, not even born yet, and they'll be linked with you and I who read that book. We'll all be part of Ultra Comics. So I thought, I've actually created an actual super being, a super mind, and the comic is just where that happens. So the comic itself is the superhero. There's no character in there. There's not a world you can go to where Ultra's walking around. No one will ever be able to meet him in a crossover. But the comic itself is the superhero, and I think it's quite I love this comic because it's quite a radical, mad idea, and I think it actually did work. I think it worked, that book, so yeah.
Oh, it did.
But, like I say, it was meant to bring us all together. The comic itself, the staples, everything, the tactile nature of it became the character.
And if we go to the next slide, what's interesting is that concept in and of it works, and it sort of is the payoff for that the book talking to you that starts in the first issue, that you sort of see here at the end of issue 1, where, you know, you're being warned to put this down, and you've said in interviews promoting this that, you know, that concept of you got to be careful of what you let inside your head. But again, what I love is you can point that out and then create this thing that will put all these awful ideas in my head. So you warned me. I mean, I have fair warning. That's not going to go away. But Ultra Comics is, and what is represented there, I got fair warning.
It works so well because we hear comics in our head. When you watch a movie and someone else is doing the dialogue and actors doing, there's a definite remove there. But when you read, you hear it inside your head. You hear voices. You hear Ultra's voice a certain way. You know, you might hear it in a different accent, you might hear it in a different gender. It can be anything. What we hear in our heads while we're reading comics is some combination of our own voice and something else. And so, what is that something? What is that doing the talking? And what happens when your own voice starts to tell you things you don't want to hear because someone's written them down for you to read? So I kind of got into that whole notion that we're reading these things and we hear these voices and we kind of just accept that, but it's really spooky and wrong.
You also said something that, like, on a personal level, jolted me when you were talking about that in another interview. And you said, our head is like the least protected space we have right now.
Yeah.
We have security systems for every other interaction that we have as humans, and then the one that could do the most potential damage, we are letting all of these voices in.
Yeah.
And I'm going to read something that you said back, because again, this scared the bejesus out of me. The result is that I'm actually seeing a kind of soul weariness, a cynicism, a sickness that permeates culture. I think we're all just fed up with ourselves and just waiting to be destroyed by the other.
Yeah.
Obviously, a day much like today, not necessarily a good day,
Yeah.
but that struck me.
I bet you're wishing you came here now, Ed.
But
well, I'll just go on. It's going to be really good. Cheer me up. I'll go on. Listen to Grant wasn't talking about me being destroyed by the other.
but it's funny because, again, I'm just going to over-personalize it, but having been somebody who was in New York in 2001 and going through all of that, I sort of have felt as a participant that things changed on that day and that something that had seemed to be fantasy became real life. And there's something about what we consume as our fantasy now that puts these apocalyptic or doomstruck scenarios in our head that has consequences we're not even aware of at this stage in our development.
Well, as I've said before, you know, that since 9/11 there's been this weird kind of obsession with viral attack, and it's not necessarily weird because obviously you get an asymmetric force that's against the West, a terrorist force, which can turn up anywhere. It can crop up right next to your bedroom. You know, it could be somebody next door plotting. It could be someone up the street who doesn't agree with anything you believe in. So it's a kind of viral attack. It's not like before when it was the Soviet Union versus the West and everyone knew who everyone was. There was these immense power blocks. Now the threat can crop up anywhere. So I think that's what lies behind all these images of viral attack and viral threat. And you know, I'm going by this place today and there's this huge vomiting head for the strain. A Guillermo del Toro thing. I love Guillermo, but I really need to see a 300-foot tall vomiting head with his tongue coming out. And it's like the strain, you know, everything's about viruses getting in under us. So I thought, well, the worst virus of all is words. You know, ideas are the most dangerous virus of all. And so I wanted to talk about that as well. We let them inside. We don't allow ourselves protection. We go on the internet and judge our strength by the atrocities we can stomach. You know, which I think has been a problem we've had for quite a few years. People, I can look at this, can't I? And sit with teeth gritted and then feel strong because they've watched something appalling. So again, it's all about that. The comic is all about what we've been through in the last 15 years.
Well, and so to that end, those images are out there, it's all out there, and the choice is ultimately yours whether you want to participate, but something is serving that up. If we go to the next image, to me that's ultimately the empty hand. At a certain point in interpretation is doing that. And again, just to reinforce the point from earlier, if we go to the next slide, you know, this moment happens in the final issue where you're being addressed again directly as a reader and pointing out that if Earth 33 is the analog, all of our troubles, all of the troubles the superheroes face began here, which is true on the most elemental of levels because we would have created them. But I love the notion here that this is now being you can read this on a certain level and it's being turned against us. We're coming to get them.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, there's two ways of reading it. You can read it as we're coming to get you, to stop what you're doing. But then you look over his shoulder and there's this big bunny rabbit. So we're coming to get you. It's almost like it's a rescue mission. Don't worry, we're coming to get you. And the 8-foot tall rabbit's right here with me.
and so to get to the end here, the last two things that I pulled up were, if we go to the next page, the very first page, Multiversity issue 1, where you're, zoom out from the micro to the macro with that demand for rent, where Nick's story starts. And if you go to the last page, and you made a reference to this earlier again, there's Nick waking up, everything is back in the universe, and the last image of the story you're telling is the handful of cash coming out. And that sort of goes back to that earlier image of the empty hand. Empty is my hand, not anymore. His hand might be empty once he empties the cash, but that rent has been paid, at least for this part of the story.
And also what happens is when you put down the comic, empty is your hand. You know, so it ties you also into the villain of the piece, and it's down to you. If you want to create this universe again, you have to pick it up and start again.
So yeah, so
I'm amazed I can still talk, right? I was yelling at Mike Tyson last night, I got drunk. No, seriously, I don't even remember the full story, but I was yelling at Mike Tyson, and thank God there was people there, because Mike Tyson could just do this to me, my head would burst into 1,000 pieces, and he didn't, God bless him. But just don't get drunk and yell at Mike Tyson.
But just don't get overconfident about that, going, well, I did it once, I can do it whenever I want to now. So, you know, typically at a convention panel, it's great to be able to spend time on something like this, but we also want to talk about moving forward. And again, as you've talked in interviews, as you've gone through Multiversity, this is sort of like your magnum opus. You've been, obviously the way it links to other works you've done, you've built this for a long time. And so the easiest thing in the world would be to say, oh, well, you're going away and you won't do superhero stuff. But now we're going to talk for a little bit about other stuff you may have coming up. So the first thing, and I think after hearing this, you'll all want to read this in one form. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to give you a little sneak peek of how the multiverse map will up and appear, and we're going to show a little bit here of how this is going to change into what the early look at the book package looks like. If you can just keep it rolling. So that you can get a little sense there of how those worlds will be. Oh, it's going to keep going even better. But we wanted to do something packaging-wise that would reflect the immensity of the story and be the easiest thing in the world to get a shot of the group of superheroes. And you know, there's a certain faction of readers that wants that Captain Carrot thing on the cover, and they want it there. But again, it goes back to my point that what you've done here is so much more immense and amazing. So in November, first week of November, right in time for your Christmas gift giving, the hardcover edition of Multiversity will be out there.
Yes!
That's the reaction I want to hear.
And I think it's probably the only book cover where you get that kind of overview of 52 different universes.
What's next? Next slide. All right, you have another project coming out next year. So that's sort of this is a very different take for you, and we're going to show you now some early art from Wonder Woman Earth 1. So this is your entry into the Earth 1 series of books. And having seen a number of the pages, a good chunk of the book already, I would say that this is very much a throwback to Wonder Woman's earliest origins and the more Edward Marston look at the character.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, I've spoken about this book before. Obviously, it's something I'm really excited about. It's completely changed the way I think and write, having done this. And yeah, we went back to Marston's original ideas about Wonder Woman. You know, one of the things I don't like, and I hate putting other people down because everyone's got takes and stuff, but my own personality, my take on Wonder Woman is that I don't really like to see the sword and shield thing. I don't like to see the only way to present strong women is to make them look like Conan the Barbarian, you know, because I think there's a lot more to it. In the Marston's original stories, although the Amazons are physically fit and they're powerful and they can fight, that wasn't what it was about. Diana was a healer, she was a scientist, she was a doctor, she was a philosopher, and it's kind of, maybe I guess that doesn't play so well on screen, you know, being a sexy, powerful philosopher. But I kind of felt there was a lot more mileage to be had from exploring those original ideas, because Marston specifically said he created Wonder Woman to be an antidote to the blood-curdling images of masculinity, as he called them, that were in the comic books. And when you think about it, I mean, he's talking about 1940 or something. How many blood-curdling images of masculinity were there in comic books? There was Superman and Batman and probably the Human Torch. And it's kind of, if only he was writing now, he was really something to fight against. So I kind of took up the cudgels. And yeah, so we've gone back and we've told this story. It basically tells the origin. It's a new origin, it's a completely revamped version of the origin that we've done. And it tells it through the form of a trial, where the Amazons have brought Diana back to basically put her on trial for going to man's world, and she has to explain herself to not only the Amazons, but to the entire audience, who seems to constantly be putting Wonder Woman on trial and saying, why aren't you as good as you should be? So we use this trial to start, and then getting into the whole, what Wonder Woman represents to me now. And I think the interesting thing about the book and why it changed what I do now is, halfway through the book, I thought, this is where the big fight's going to happen, isn't it? There's going to be this huge fight between Wonder Woman and the Amazons. And then I come up with a better idea, and there's no fights. This book has no fights. And it basically threw all the rules of boys' adventure fiction, and it's really exciting to do. It was a way of telling a story that I don't think I've done before, and it kind of totally worked. So it's opened up ways of thinking that I wasn't privy to in the past. And as I say, it's been a very different. I tried my best to do a book that passed the Bechdel test. It's the first 48 pages. It's got no men, and it's women just talking about science and art and culture. And when the men do turn up, they're pretty. They don't stand a chance against these girls. These are women who've been on an island for 7,000 years, developing their own technology, their own culture, their own philosophy, their own art, and they're just better than us, you know. But they're also slightly lofty and aloof, and Diana's a bit different. We explain why she's a bit different in the book. But yeah, it's taking the Amazons as a culture again. These aren't bloodthirsty women who haven't changed for 7,000 years. This is an actual functioning culture of immortals who've got their own way of thinking, their own way of living, and we just explore that. And you notice all the Amazons are like supermodels, so we're kind of playing with the thing that Marston did, because they were beautiful, you know, and it kind of doesn't cover the range of spectrum of women's shapes or women's bodies. Every one of these girls is like supermodels, and it's quite a shock for Diana when she arrives in our world, and women are different, there's different things going on, you know, people look different, they're small and tall and wider or narrower, and it's a big shock for her to see that everyone isn't just this perfect Amazonian image of genetically engineered beauty.
We would be remiss to point out, if we did not point out, that the artwork is done by Yannick Paquette. Beautiful.
And Yannick is brilliant. Not only does he do these fantastic images, but he worked through the Amazon culture. The only elements of masculinity that you actually see in the culture are the remains in these towers of the kind of phallic columns of Greece. But the actual the designs that he did, everything in Amazon culture. If you notice, Diana's invisible planes up there in the corner, and it's a triangle, it's a delta shape. Everything's made on triangles and fronds and ferns and shell shapes. So we kind of took away all elements of masculine design as well. And Yannick was just amazing. He thought the whole thing through, and when you see the things they use, even the weapons that they have are nothing like masculine weapons. They don't look like masculine weapons. The cups and jars they use don't look like the stuff that we have in this world as designs. So it's kind of, the work he's done is astonishing. And the fact that he's also known as what they used to call a good girl artist really ties back to the Harry Peter thing, you know, and the Marston thing, because that's what it was about. Harry Peter worked in Stanton's studio along with people like Joe Shuster, and Stanton did this kind of fetish, bondage art stuff. So it always had those weird roots, and we wanted to kind of stay true to that. And I think Yannick was the only person that could pull all of this off, and it's 120 pages of stuff like this. It's amazing.
And if that's not enough, there's two other projects you announced this morning at a press breakfast. The first one is Batman Black and White. Everybody's looking at the screen expecting to see something. We're not showing you anything. You'll just have to listen.
Yeah, I'm doing it. As you know, I mean, I've stopped doing the monthly books at DC, which kind of freed up a lot of energy to do other stuff. But I'm not walking away from DC completely. And one of the projects I've always wanted to do is this big Batman Black and White book. And although there's a couple of comics artists in there, I think Ivan Rice is doing a story, Bill Sienkiewicz is doing a story. But for most of the book, I kind of recruited the friends I've made through Alan Amato and his Temple of Art project. So we got a bunch of really interesting alternative artists from Los Angeles. We're going to be doing like photo stories and fully painted fine art kind of Batman stories, and basically all kinds of different things. And again, it ties into the multiversity, because each of these stories is a completely different take on Batman. And we're doing a Batman story. I think Bill Sienkiewicz is going to do a 5-dimensional Batman story. And there's a Batman of Zura and Art story. So let's get, but it's the daughter of the original Batman of Zura and Art, and she has 75% Bat DNA. And she's kind of, so Alan Amato's taken these fantastic photographs. We wanted to reinvent the idea of the photo strip, because you know there's always been those fumetti and photo strips that we've seen before, but no one's really applied the techniques of modern photography. No one's looked at what, say, David Hockney did with photography and put that into a comic strip. No one's kind of played around with the way photography's changed over the years or made that work. So he's doing a story, but the girl who's played Batman in it, and she's called Batman. She's like, there's this model Elizabeth Evans, and Elizabeth actually went to a trainer, and she's got a 30-pack. It's not just a 6-pack, it's like a 30-pack. I've never seen anything like it. This gigantic fetishistic bat helmet. So I think it's going to be really quite exciting. Matt Bowen, the painter, is going to be doing a story about Bruce Wayne's girlfriends, because we've never seen them all in one room, like Julie Madison, Vicky Vale, and all that. Hey, let's talk about Bruce. What was your experience? So it's kind of stuff like that, and we're just playing around with Batman, lots of different versions of Batman. I don't know how big the book's going to be. I think it'll be a little bit bigger than a traditional Batman black and white, but it's in the same series, and edited by March Allen.
Well, as you referenced, those are all going to show different worlds, different takes, and then the other project you discussed today is called Multiversity 2.
Yes. It's just for you, Adam. No, Multiversity 2 is not really what you think it is. It's not a follow-up to the Multiversity, but basically because I mentioned at the end of the last issue of the Multiversity this idea that there was another one. Because all these years, since 1987, I've been trying to get the Multiversity back in through the back door. And we got the 52 worlds in with the 52 series. But I kind of want the infinite multiverse back. And then we thought, well, why not have infinities and really mess with everyone? So we're using this idea from string theory that the universe is one of many. But they have this beautiful image where the universe is all like bubbles. So if you imagine that multiverse map we saw as one bubble, and it contains 52 universes, but there are other bubbles out there, each containing 50 or 100 universes. So we're actually making this so insane that no one will ever be able to say, I don't understand this anymore. So this notion of, it's the idea of the bubble universes, and each one buds off another one, so we can go anywhere. And Dan said, well, you better do something, you should explore this in some way. So I'm doing a series of books, which is kind of one-off stories, like the Wonder Woman book, which will go to different places in the multiverse that we haven't seen at all. The first one's a Flash story, which I've always wanted to do for a while. It's been something that I really wanted to get to. So we're going to launch this series with the Flash book, but then I'm going further out. And the way the DC universe that we've seen, the multiverse that we've seen, is kind of based on harmonics and it's the Western tonal scale. But I wondered what would happen if you applied, say, Eastern scales or Middle Eastern scales to the notion of comics in the way that we apply the Western musical scale to the multiversity. So instead of the octaves, we'll be playing with a lot of different things, and it means we can push characters even further out of how they're normally perceived and play them very differently. So it's going to be a series of books. I don't know how often they'll come out. As soon as I finish, another one will come out. So, but that's the first one. The Flash will be the first one. It's with an artist I've worked with before, but I can't tell you who it is.
Well, for me personally, that was thrilling news because, again, from a publishing point of view, what was great about Multiversity was it's this gift in a way, if you look at it the right way, that you've lined out all these worlds. This is a map for creators to come in and use, and I think there's a way that you could look at how you've written superhero comics over the years as someone who's benefited from that. You've gone through history and found obscure characters. Batman is Irwin Larson's here. He got his round of applause here, and yet it almost strikes me as almost respectfulness from you as a creator that you do the same. But the question I have is, do you find it at all frustrating that creators don't really seem to pick that up? Do you expect that that's intimidating, or are there other reasons? Or
no idea. That's a little bit frustrating. When I did Seven Soldiers, the idea was very much to hand these things out, and it was just to say, here's a new way of doing it. Same with the multiverse. It was the idea of taking familiar concepts from the multiverse, like the world of the super sons or one of those things, and just giving them a bit more thought. So it was always based on something. It was always based on someone's work, and I would love it if someone based something in my work. And it's happened a little bit more. Scott Snyder's done a little bit of stuff in the Batman Eternal book, which draws in my Batman, and some people are picking up on stuff, like Jeff King and Convergence has picked up on a lot of stuff. But yeah, honestly, I'm putting it out there. Part of joining in with a big old universe like this one is that you want to leave little nuggets around for future writers to find and get excited with and to develop and to play with, like I've done on this project. So yeah, I'm throwing that stuff out there. So any of you guys who want to write comics, pick up these nuggets and do something, please.
We have about 10 minutes, 5 minutes left. They're flashing different signs. About 9 minutes left. There's a mic over here. People are making
That's about
dashes.
as much as my voice has got left.
Yeah, exactly. It's all been well timed. So I'm just going to move over here to take questions.
Adam, this kid is a genius. Wait till you hear this question.
All right, you've already been identified by Grant as a genius. Here comes your genius question. No pressure. Go ahead.
All right, so you're my favorite writer.
You're my favorite reader.
So the Multiversity, I just love the whole concept and the idea of it, and just the variations on characters, and just the in-depth about bleed space and like fear the gods and stuff that most people wouldn't understand. That's just out there, and it's awesome. And I was wondering, is there, like you said, there's going to be another series, is there going to be any like mini-series going on about like some of the worlds like Earth 36 that most of you are going, what's Earth 36 exactly? So besides a guidebook, are there going to be any mini-series going off of that, like maybe, you know how they've been doing 3D covers, you know, maybe doing a 3D cover series with the multiverse, you know?
Well, like I said to you before, I mean, I'd like more people to pick up on these ideas and do series, because like you say, I love the Earth 36 characters. I really, you know, particular ones, Red Racer and those guys, I would kind of like to write that. And that may turn out to be one of the books I end up doing, because I'll go with the characters I enjoy. But yeah, I mean, I want other people to do them, and I know you've got like 200 new multiverses you've invented, so I think, yeah, I mean, we need you to get in there and start writing some of this stuff as well.
Thanks.
Hey, sir. Sir, for your amazing enthusiasm. I have to this is one of the variant covers of the guidebook. This is from Grant's sketch. I stole this out. I stole this out of the
You've said in other interviews that you've been working on Multiversity for years. But in the main Multiversity series, there are also some nods to like the Secret Wars event going on at Marvel, which is very recent, but like the Marvel pastiches kind of call back to that. So is that a coincidence? Did you get Hickman drunk and pick his brain? How'd that work?
Yeah, we got him drunk, but we couldn't find his brain. Sorry, John. I couldn't resist that one. No, that actually was that's kind of coincidence, I guess. I mean, you know, comic companies, they each watch what each other are doing. And I guess, you know, DC and Marvel saw the potential in the multiverse, and they both started playing around with it. But yeah, Multiversity was started in 2006, right after 52. And most of the books were written then. And they weren't finished, they were just written in outline, they were kind of broken down into panels. And as the years went by, obviously I saw what was happening. I was able to add things in and reflect what was going on in comics at the time. So I was still working on it right up to the end date. So I was able to, like I say, you know, reference stuff like that Amazing Avengers thing that he did, and also stuff that was happening in DC, even with Convergence and Flashpoint. So it was kind of, although the project was done, as I say, I just kept working on it and adding to it to make sure it stayed current.
So there's no greater significance in the fact that Earth 7 and 8 are the first ones that destroyed the Marvel analog universes and multiverses?
No, well again, it was easy to predict back in 2006 that the Ultimate Universe was doomed, you know, so that's why I chose
I got another multiversity variant for you.
And that's why I chose that one.
Next question.
Grant, you're one of the most amazing writers. You make all of our heads hurt every time we read one of your comics. It's amazing. When you were doing the Multiversity, as you just said, you started this back with 52. Since 52, we've had Flashpoint and now Convergence. What are your takes as somebody who's kind of defying the multiverse of what Flashpoint and Convergence has done for the DC universe?
Well, I guess because I'm staying slightly outside of it, I'm fine, honestly, whatever they do, you know, I've kind of retreated a little bit from the main universe because it got so different from the one that I was kind of participated in for most of my career at DC. And it just seemed to me that it was time, you know, it's like, look at me, every year it's getting worse, you know. And there's a lot of younger people coming into comics, there's a lot of women coming into comics, there's a lot of new voices. And I didn't want to be this old guy in the middle of all that saying, oh,
It should be like this, you know, I remember this in the day when it was me and Stanley. And one of these young whippersnappers up to now.
have to
Like today, a broken nose.
So honestly, I didn't want to become that guy I just became. So it kind of, for me, it's really good to just move out with that and have my own kind of thing and make up my own little universes over in the corner and not get in the way of everyone. You know, just like playing chess under the tree somewhere where the kids play football.
Great. Yes, sir, next question.
You say you've got plans for different universes, different universes within the different multiverses. Will that include expanding out other comic companies' universes that have been since absorbed into the DC universe, like Charleston, Milestone, or Wildstorm?
Well, again, obviously, there's news on some of the things you're talking about, which isn't my news to tell, but for me, I mean, what we did was use the ones that we had and tried to make something of the ones that we didn't have, like, say, Thunder Agents. I just created my own version of Thunder Agents called Agents of Wonder. And it actually means something. It's like World Organization of National Defence Executive Reserves, you know, it's stupid. So I actually worked it all out and created characters like the Thunder Agents, but that's what I did. I mean, I don't know going forward what we'll do with some of these other imprints. I mean, one of the things we couldn't do originally in the multiverse was kind of film and TV worlds as well. And Dan just said, no, let's take them out, let's just stick to the comics. And the same thing, you know, because the Young Justice cartoons kind of has this Earth 16 thing. And we tried our best to reflect that, but we didn't want any of the worlds to reflect outside media at all in the end. So the Young Justice world sort of became part of the Super Sons world and was confused into that as a notion. But yeah, I mean, again, this is a lot for other people to take forward, and maybe we might see some of the things you're talking about almost fitting into that umbrella.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. My question was about how you deliberately left some of the worlds unknown. Is there a deeper esoteric meaning to that, or is that one of the nuggets you want other authors to pick up on?
Yeah, I mean, I tried to make it sound esoteric because it's, you know, 7 unknown worlds. Like you have all these, you know, 7 dwarfs, 7 unknown men, 7 secret, whatever the hell. So I wanted to sound esoteric, but no, it was actually just me thinking, well, if it never goes beyond the 52, I've stamped on too many of these universes, and if I leave a few open, at least some other creators can come in and do their own and fill those slots. And I think that's what's actually going to be happening with some stuff.
This is the worst part of every panel I do with Grant. This is our last question.
Okay, so I'm a complete noob. I walked in, just wanted to see what it was, and your work sounds really amazing, and I will actually go look into it. I had a question about your hate and infinity. You said something about the fathers had to be murdered by the sons. Why does it have to be that way? Why can't they work with the sons, or why can't the fathers influence? Why do they have to murder?
Because that just seems to be the way of stories, you know. I totally agree with you. There's plenty of other ways. I didn't murder my own father, he died of cancer. So, you know, cancer murdered my dad, and I'll get it now. But no, you're right, there's a lot of different ways, you know, why isn't the daughter and the mother? But if you look at, say, Multiversity, Pax Americana, we do this sequence with Captain Atom and the Tevatron particle accelerator, and he's talking about the universe. Basically, it's the kind of patriarchal, masculine idea of the universe exploding from a big bang, being projected from a fiat lux, you know. So in both the religion and science, we have this idea the universe exploded out of nowhere. It's quite a masculine idea. Right next to that sequence, we then show what's her name? Not Silk Spectre, the other one. Nightshade and her mother. And you notice that sequence starts, one sequence ends with the barrel of a gun, the gunshot, the masculine explosive projection of the universe. The next scene starts with the close-up of the dot of an eye. And then the next panel has a smaller version of that. And what we're actually showing there is the current cosmology where the universe is budding. It's a daughter universe buds out of a mother universe, and it's a more feminine approach to cosmology. So we blend those two ideas about cosmology up together. But no, you're right, I mean, there's lots of ways of doing it, but for this particularly, we were kind of looking at all the Oedipus stuff and all those myths and the way stories have been driven, and particularly superhero comics, which are all, a lot of them are about boys who've lost their fathers, and Bruce Wayne's lost his father and his mother, but he's kind of dealing with it, you know, in this violent, angry way. So I just wanted to talk about some theme that is recurred again and again in comics, this notion of killing the father and replacing the father, and also, as I say, it happens to generations of creative people. who are superseded by new generations who have different ideas and better ideas and more advanced ideas. And basically they write the older guys out of existence. And I think it's just something that happens, you know, it's just the way the world works, because we can't keep having the same boring people saying the same boring things all the time. And again, it's down to you to write that one, because you come up with that as a better idea, you know, so that's yours.
The challenge is in front of you. As always, a fabulous hour. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great
Thank
job.
you.